Okay, so we're going to go over your Unit 3 test review. Your test will be tomorrow, Tuesday. You will have all day, and it will be shut down the next day. So make sure you go in and take the test on the day that you should. Okay, so a few notes before we get started on how you're going to get this test done. Okay, so Unit 3 is all about proportions. Okay, so that is your line equals line. Okay, if you were in class, you've heard me say that a lot. Okay, if you weren't, then that is how we set it up. So we do a line equals line, and that is a proportion. Okay, so for your notes, if you have a percent in your question, or if a percent is in your question, then you must have the correct percent on top of 100 in your proportion. Okay, so if you have a percent in your question, if you're given a percent or you're looking for a percent, then you're going to set up your proportion with 100 at the bottom and putting your correct percent sign at the top of 100. Okay, so it'll look like this. All right. So line equals line, and then whatever the percent is will be over 100% all the time. Okay, so the 100 will always take this spot right here. All right, and that is whenever you have a percent. So you must use this one. Okay, if you have no percent, then you must look for two things. Those two things are actually called units. Okay, you must look for two things that you are comparing to set up your proportion. Okay, so if you have no percent in your question, then your proportion will still be line equals line, except for this time you will not have 100 and you won't have a percent sign up here. Okay, also your units must match. Okay, what that means is if you have miles and hours, then you must put all your miles on top and all your hours on the bottom. Or if you choose to, put your hours on top and then your miles on the bottom. Just make sure that whatever you choose to be on top stays on top on both sides. Okay, whatever you choose to be on the bottom stays on the bottom on both sides. And then in order to solve it, okay, to solve a proportion, you would just cross multiply and divide by whatever's left. Okay, a couple more things. Whenever you see the word per, that is equal to the number 1. Okay, also the word each will be equal to the number 1. Okay, so usually in all of these you'll be given 3 numbers and you'll always be looking for the 4th one. Okay, pretty much for this whole test you'll be given 3 numbers and you'll be looking for the 4th one, which is why you're setting up a proportion. But just know that if you see the word per, then that means one of your numbers is 1. Or if you see the word each, that also means one of your numbers is 1. Okay, so those are also there as well. All right, so number 1 says, at Rachel's baby shower, she hired a caterer to serve food. Rachel created a budget for 80 people to attend the baby shower with a per person food cost of $5.50. If the number of guests attending the opening was 45% more than expected, then how much was the final food cost? Okay, so since we're given a percent, we are going to be using the proportion with percents. So we'll definitely have a percent sign on top of 100. So I'm going to set that up. So it's going to be line equals line. Pretty much that's how you'll start all of your questions. And then you must have a percent over 100. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a percent here. So that way we understand that these percents go on the same side. Okay, whatever you get is with 100%. All right. If it helps you to find two things that you're comparing, okay, if I was reading this, I'm really comparing, I'm comparing the actual guests that attended the party to the budgeted guests, okay, because she had a budgeted amount that she had for the guests. Just write that down. Okay, so these are the guests that she planned for. That'll go on the bottom. And then those who actually attended the party, because it said more people actually came. It was 45% more than expected. That'll go on top. Okay, those are the ones that actually came. These are the ones she planned for because she had a budget for those. Okay. All right, so we want to figure out what we're going to put where, and one of them will be a variable, okay? So, like I said, you'll usually have 3 numbers inside of your proportion, and then you'll be looking for what represents the variable, or the x, okay? So, I'll look in here. I see that it says 45% more than expected, okay? So, since it says 45% more than, first, I want you to know that you can always have a percent that is greater than 100. Okay? So you can have a percent that is greater than 100%. So 45% more than just means that I'm going to start off with 100. So you always start off with 100. Okay? And if it is 45% more than, that means you will be adding 45. Okay? 45% more than. So plus 45 to give me my new percent. Okay, so 100 plus 45 is 145%. Okay, if it was 45% less than, you would do 100, which is always your starting point, minus 45 because it would have said less than. Okay, but it said more than, so we are adding. Okay, so that is my new percent that I'm going to plug in for those who actually attended the baby shower. Okay, so remember that 145 came from the words 45% more than. So you start off with 100 and you either add or subtract. We added because it said more than. Okay, all right. Now, if you do have a amount of money here, we're not going to worry about that until we actually figure out how many people actually attended the baby shower. Okay, we want to figure out what was the 145% first, and then we'll multiply that by the cost. Okay, so leave the cost, the amount of money, leave that for after. All right, we're worried about the 80. So the 80, okay, so she had a budget for 80 people to attend the baby shower. Okay, that was her budgeted amount of people that she budgeted for. So we're going to put the 80 with the 100%. Okay, so the 80 represents 100%. Okay, we want to figure out what represents the 145%. Okay, these are the actual people that attended the party. So we don't know it yet. We're going to put a variable. Usually I'll put an x. All right, that is the correct proportion. Okay, so 80 represents the 100%, but then she got 45% more than she expected. So she got 100 plus 45, and we want to figure out what goes with that. Okay, so the x represents the 145%. So the 80 goes with 100%, and then you had the 45% more, so you have 145, and see what goes with that. Okay, so we solve that by cross multiply. All right, when we cross multiply, we multiply diagonally. Okay, the two numbers that you can multiply. All right, so you would multiply 145 times 80, and that is going to give you, if you multiply it correctly, 11,600. Okay, but then you're not done. Okay, to solve a proportion, after you cross multiply, you must divide by whatever is left. So we've multiplied these two, divide by the other number that is left. So we're going to do whatever we just got, which is 11,600. Divided by the number that's left, which is 100. And you will end up with 116. Okay, that is your x, because you've multiplied and you divided by the number. So x equals 116. And so there was 116 actual guess. All right, so your x will be 116. Okay, that's how many people attended. That's the 45% more than. But then you want to figure out what is the cost of these amount of people. Okay, so since there was 116 guests, we want to find out the cost. So we're going to just multiply by the cost, which was $5.50 for each person. Okay, and your answer will be, okay, you have two numbers behind the decimal. So you're going to have two numbers behind the decimal in your answer. Okay, and so your answer will be $638 was the cost for those amount of people that actually attended the baby shower. Okay. All right. So just make sure you go over this a couple of times until you understand how I came to my answer. All right, number 2, it says in science class, Kyra noticed that the balance scale showed 3 ounces for a sample of matter and 42.3 grams for the same sample. She has a frog that weighs 522.75 grams, but needs to know the weight in ounces. Which proportion could Kyra use to find X, which is the weight of the frog in ounces? Okay, so we don't have any kind of percent in here. They're not looking for a percent, so we're just going to use the normal proportion without percents. And so it's just going to be line equals line. Okay, now with this one, like I said before, you definitely want to find 2 units that you are comparing, and usually your units will follow the number. Okay, so 3 ounces and 42.3 grams. Okay, so we're comparing ounces and grams, and so I'm going to put that here. Okay, you always want to find out what you're comparing, especially if you're not dealing with percents. Okay, so we have no percents here, so we definitely want to find 2 things that we're comparing. And like I said, just look behind the number to see what you're comparing. So that means that all of my numbers for the ounces should go on the top, and all of my numbers for the grams should go on the bottom. It has to be that way. Okay. All right, so my 3 would go with ounces, and my 42.3 would go with grams. Okay, just know that they go together, so they should be in the same fraction. So usually I'll say same sentence, same fraction, so that way you know what goes together. So the 3 has to go in the same fraction with 42.3. They have to go together. If I don't put it like that, I'll get it wrong. Okay, and then I have another number here that I have to place, which is 522.75, and that is grams, so it has to go with grams. So where does it go? It has to go on the bottom, since grams are on the bottom. So that 522.75 has to go on the bottom with grams. That means I'm looking for the top. Okay, what is the weight in ounces? Okay, so the ounces is what I'm looking for. To solve a proportion, you just cross multiply the 2 numbers that you can. So you'll multiply these 2, you multiply diagonally. Okay, now the only thing is, if you look at the answer choices, right, it doesn't actually want you to solve this. So all you have to do is find the one that matches your proportion. Okay, so you want one with 3 and 42.3 in the same fraction, and then X and 522.75 in the same fraction. Okay, you want 3 and X to match on top, and 42.3 and 522.75 to match on the bottom. Okay, just pretty much just look for whatever you have. Okay, and I have, it would be B. Okay, that's exactly what I got. All right, so if you do have it upside down, which is fine, just make sure that your 3 and your X are across from each other, and your 42.3 and 522.75 are across from each other as well, and that these numbers are in the same fraction. Okay, because sometimes people will have it flipped, but that's still okay as long as you make sure those things are correct. All right, number 3 says allergies in dogs are sometimes treated with the over-counter antihistamines. A typical dose is 0.25 milligrams, it should say, of antihistamine for each pound of body weight. Which amount is closest to the number of milligrams of antihistamine that should be administered to a dog weighing 18 pounds? So I don't have any percents in here, so I'm just going to have a straight up proportion with no 100%. Okay, that means I'm looking for 2 units that I'm comparing then. Okay, so I look behind the numbers. I have 0.25 milligrams, and I also have pounds. Okay, so I'm comparing milligrams. I'll just write mg and pounds. Okay, you can also write lbs for pounds. That's the abbreviation for pounds. Okay, then we'll put our numbers where they go. So you got 0.25. Okay, that's milligrams, so it has to go on top with milligrams. And I have 18 pounds. But let's take care of what goes with 0.25. Well, I told you before, the word each, okay, it means the number 1. Okay, so I do have the number 1, and it goes with pounds. Okay, so 1 pound, each pound. So that 1 goes with pounds. They have to be in the same fraction because they go together. Okay, and then I have my 18 pounds. It has to go on the bottom with pounds. Okay, I'm looking for the milligrams, so that'll be X. Okay, and then I just solve it by cross multiplying. Okay, so you'll be doing 0.25 times 18, and that will get you 4.50 if you do it correctly. And then you would divide by the number that is left, which is the 1. Okay, if you do that, you should see that you'll get the same number. Okay, because anything divided by 1 is that number. Okay, okay, so you'll get 4.50 or 4.5 because you don't necessarily need that 0 milligrams. Okay. Okay. Number 4 says, a local grocery store sells frozen fish sticks in packages of 18. If the cost for a package of 18 frozen fish sticks is $1.95, what is the approximate cost per frozen fish stick? Okay, so we don't have any percents here, so I'm just going to have a straight up proportion where I'll try to find 2 units that I'm comparing, okay? So no 100 here, okay? No percents. So just try to find 2 units that you're comparing, all right? Money does count as a unit, okay? So we have 18 frozen fish sticks, okay? And we also have money. Money does count as a unit, okay? So I usually like to put money on top, so I'll just put money on top. Okay, I'll just put a $sign for that. All right, and then frozen fish sticks would be my other unit. Okay, so your units usually follow directly after the number. So 18 frozen fish sticks. All right, so they said the cost, if the cost for a package of 18 frozen fish sticks, so 18 for frozen fish sticks, so it'll go down bottom, okay, is $1.95. So my money goes on top, so I'll put $1.95 here. All right. What is the approximate cost per frozen fish stick? Okay, remember, per, just like each, means 1. So I really want to know, what is it for 1 frozen fish stick instead of 18? Okay, so I'll put the 1 with frozen fish sticks, which will be on the bottom. Okay, it has to match. Okay, and I just want to know the cost for that 1. All right, cross multiply. So you will multiply 195 times 1. Okay, and you'll find out that if you multiply something by 1, you get the same number. Okay, and then you want to divide. Don't forget, you want to divide by whatever's left. The number that's left is 18. So I'm going to take what I have, 195, and divide it by the number that's left, which is 18. If you do that, you will come up with your answer, which is 0.108. Okay, and then some other numbers, but I only want, with money, you only want 2 numbers behind your decimal. Okay, so that means that you have to round to the nearest hundredth whenever you're dealing with money, okay? You want to see whether this 0 is going to go up or is it going to stay the same. So you got 0.108, okay? But with money, you can only have 2 numbers behind the decimal. So you're going to round to the nearest hundredth, okay? Which is the second number behind the decimal. See whether it goes up or stay the same. Well, the number behind it is an 8, and the 8 is big enough to push the 0 into a 1. So your real answer after you round will be that it is $0.11. Okay, so it'll be 11 cents because that 8 moved that 0 up. All right, so your answer would be B. Okay, so one fish stick is 11 cents. All right, number 5 says the U.S. track team runs 26.5 miles each day. The Jamaican track team runs 1.3 miles per hour. What is the difference in kilometers between the distances that the track teams will run in one day? Okay, that is very important. Okay, they want to know what it is in one day. They also want to know what it is in kilometers. So they tell you that 1 mile is approximately 1.6 kilometers. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find, okay, what is it for the track team in kilometers for the U.S., and then what is it for the Jamaican track team in kilometers? All right. Just make sure that you're dealing with what it is in one day. Okay. So it has to be one day. All right. So here, I'll write that down. So in one day, that's what the question wants. And it has to be kilometers. All right. So let's find what it is for the U.S. Okay. All right, we have no percents, and so I'm just going to do a regular proportion and just find the two things that I'm comparing. Okay, so this is the U.S. All right, so I'm comparing miles, right? That's the number that follows. I'm sorry, that's the word that follows the number. So I'm doing miles, and they want in one day. So I'm just going to write that just so I don't forget that they want one day. And then they want me to get kilometers, right? What is the difference in kilometers? So, okay, I'll just put that in parentheses, okay? But basically, my miles will be on top, my kilometers will be on the bottom, all right? And then I'll end up doing one for Jamaica. So, for the Jamaicans, right? I will pretty much, I'll take that squiggly line, all right? I'll pretty much do the same thing. So line equals line, and then I want miles in one day. Okay, that's what the question wants, not hours. And kilometers in one day. Okay, that way I don't forget that they want one day. All right, so let's look at the U.S. track team. So they do 26.5 miles each day. All right. Now, what I tell my students in class is that the left side will always come from the chart. But since you have no chart, the test gave you what you need in order to convert from miles to kilometers. So we'll put that on the left side, okay? So you'll put your conversion for both of them on the left side. So we're going to do 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers, okay? That's what this just said. All right, so you must use it, okay? We're going to do the same thing here. In order to get from miles to kilometers, we have to use their conversion. So it's going to be 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers, okay? So they're both the same because we're both going to convert to kilometers. Now we have to see what we're putting in on the right side, okay? So whatever's in the problem will go on the right side. Okay, so the U.S., it is 26.5 miles each day. It is already in days, so I can use this number the way it is. So 26.5 will go on the top because it is miles. Okay, all miles go on the top. That's what I said when I set up the proportion. Okay, so 26.5 miles. Okay, I'm looking for the kilometers. All right, and then let's set up Jamaican. All right, so it says 1.3 for the Jamaicans, 1.3 miles per hour. Okay, that's not what I want. I want it in days. So what I have to do is think about how many hours are in a day. Well, there are 24 hours in a day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and multiply it by 24 because there's 24 hours in a day. All right. So before I put this in, I want to find what it is for a day. So I'm going to multiply this by 24 because there's 24 hours in a day. So 1.3 times 24. Okay. And you will get, if you do it correctly, 31.2. Okay. So it'll be 31.2 miles in a day for the Jamaicans. Okay. So you had to convert that because that was hours. okay, per hour for 1 hour. But I want to know what it is for 24 hours, 1 day. So that's why I multiply it by 24. Okay, so I'm going to put 31.2 where the miles are. Okay, that's how much they do in 1 day. Okay. All right, those are your two proportions that you're going to solve. And then after that, right, you want to find the difference, which means subtract the two answers that you get. All right, but first, let's just solve the proportions. Okay, so we cross multiply. We'll do 26.5 times 1.6, and you will get 4240. Okay, and that is for the US. That is your X here. Okay, well, you divide it by 1, but you get the same answer. Okay, so you will divide this by whatever's left, which is the 1, but you'll get the same thing. All right, now we're going to do it for the Jamaicans. Cross multiply. So you got 31.2 times 1.6. And you will get 49.92. Okay, and that is for the Jamaicans. Divided by 1, you'll get the same thing. Okay. All right, so we are basically just going to find the difference. We have it in kilometers. Okay, so these are both the kilometers. Okay, which is what they wanted. They wanted it kilometers. We're just going to find the difference. Difference means subtract. So just to subtract the 2 to get your final answer. So we're going to do 49.92 minus the other number, 42.40 to get our answer. Okay, and you get an answer of 7.52 kilometers. Okay, between the two. All right, and then they want you to put it in, so just make sure you put it in the grid correctly. All right, so behind the decimal is 52, and before the decimal is a 7. Okay, it is positive just in case if you want to. Okay, just make sure that you definitely fill in the circles, because the grid and the test, it grades by filling in the circles. Okay, so don't just write the numbers. You must also fill in the circles correctly. All right, which is just circling the number that you have. Okay, number 6. The cost of Miss Frizzle's electric bill increased by 7% to $75.14 per month. What was the cost of her bill before it increased? Okay, so we have a percent, so we're definitely going to use the proportion that has percent over 100. Okay, that is because we have a percent. I'm going to go ahead and put a 100% there, so that way you understand that the percents all go on the right side. Okay, so it increased by 7%, so that just means we're going to add 7. All right, we always start off with 100. Okay, you always start off with 100. And then if it says increase by, that means add 7. Okay, and so just like I told you before, you can have a percent that is greater than 100. All right, so 100 plus 7 is 107%, and that's what you will put here. Okay, all right, so it increased by 7%, which is 107%, to 75.14. So the number that goes with 107% is 75.14. Okay, that means we are looking for the number that goes with 100. Okay, so 107% went with 75.14. All right, we want to know what was it before it increased. Okay, when it was 100%, what was it? Okay, and so we would just make sure that that proportion is correct. Okay, and then cross multiply like we always do. Okay, so you will do 100 times 75.14. Okay, instead of me doing it like that, I'll do it where the one with more numbers is on top. Okay, it's better that way. And you will get 7,514 if you do it correctly. Okay, Here, we'll practice putting in our decimal. Okay, so I have 2 numbers behind the decimal. So in my answer, I'll have 2 numbers behind in my answer. And so you would get 7,514. Okay? Then don't forget, when you're doing a proportion, after you cross multiply, you must divide in order to find this x. So you must divide by whatever's left. The only number that's left is 107. So we're going to divide by 107. So take what you have and divide it by the number on the outside of my circle, which is 107, to get your answer. And you will get 70, right? 0.224, okay, with some other numbers left, all right? But with money, we only want 2 numbers behind the decimal, okay? So I only go one more past that just to see what happens to this 2. So I have 70.224 after I divide, and I want to see what happens to the hundredths place again, okay? The second number behind the decimal. Well, see whether it goes up or stay the same. This 2 will stay the same because 4 is not big enough to change the 2, okay? It has to be 5 or bigger in order to change a number. If you're not 5 or bigger, it will not change. So it's going to be $70.22. Okay? All right. So number 7 says, Johnny got 12 answers wrong on his math test. If he got 30% of his answers wrong, what is the best estimation for the number of questions that Johnny got correct? Okay, so they want the ones that he got correct, and they want the best estimation. So it's not going to be exact. They just want you to see which number is closest to your answer. Okay, all right. So I do have a percent here, so I'm going to do a line equals line, and it's definitely going to have 100% on the bottom. Okay, and then a percent on the top. Okay, so let's see what we want. Okay, so he got 12 answers wrong, and that represents 30% of his answers wrong. Okay, so for right now, we're just going to find, okay, what did he get wrong and what was the total amount inside of the test before we find out what he got correct. So let's find what he got wrong first, so that way we can get the total of how many questions there were, and then we'll subtract to get how many he got correct. Okay, you'll see what I'm talking about when I do it. All right, so we're going to compare those that he got wrong to the total amount of questions, okay, which represents 100%. All right, so he got 12 answers wrong, so 12 will go on the top with wrong. And then that also is 30% of his answers wrong, so the 30% will also go with wrong. Okay, so they're on the top. We want to find out, okay, first of all,